Hello, Mom. This is my book report. Here we go. My name is Larry McCarty, and this is my book review for the book The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. First off, I consider the story poorly written. It's confusing. It doesn't explain anything. Just leaves it if it's common knowledge, which obviously it's not. I didn't care for the story. I thought the dialogue was short and choppy in places where I've always needed dialogue to be rich, and it needs to roll off the tongue like chocolate, instead of short and choppy like a realistic conversation. If I want a realistic conversation, I'll go have one. If I'm reading a book, I want to be hooked by it. This book did not hook me. It took 3 chapters to get what I considered the exciting part of the book. The first 2 were very boring, and I had to grind my way through them. It's like, this is not going to be fun. The beginning of the book was weird, with starting at a funeral. It didn't make sense at first. Why would he just drive away as he was pulled by something? Was there some force pulling him down the lane? I thought the opal miner killing the kid's cat was an unneeded point of the story. Like, why kill a cat? You just caused this kid a bunch of pain by killing his only friend. Obviously, his sister's not his friend. His sister's his sister. But, why kill the cat? The story barely mentioned the tomcat later. Only once did I count them mentioning it, and it was right after. Like, if you're gonna make this big point of killing the kid's cat, bringing in this tomcat, then mention the tomcat later. Don't just write it and then, whoop, off it goes. Poorly written, like I said. The opal miner's death didn't tie into the rest of the story. Just got mentioned by the girl Letty. Didn't have an impact on the story for the amount of work put into it. I thought it was pointless. Like, why not just let him leave? Or let him run away with the car? Or why have his head chopped off? You know, gory details for no reason. There was no point in it. The Hemstock women from the start seemed odd to me. Reading it, I thought they were originally going to be the antagonists. Like, something's off about these people. They don't seem right. You know, they just had an odd feeling. The journey to the other world confused me. Simply walk through the woods into an alternate universe seemed poorly written to me. How does the magic work to get from here to there? How does the magic stop whatever is there coming here on its own free will? There's a lot of lore and workings from the magic world that I didn't understand, and he could have explained it in very rich detail. And like, oh, it's this reason, or it's a magic spell, or it's our power of our souls that are keeping it back. Or nothing. Absolutely nothing. Why are cats growing in the ground? All that was spoken of that is that's the old way they were grown. But why? Why not just get a cat the regular way from a mother cat through birth? You know? How did the willow witching rod lead them to the evil rug creature? From my knowledge, willow witching rods lead to water. Was it some force inside the creature that was attracted to the witching rod? Is there some magnetic pull in the rod of the wood that's brought in through the water, through the wood? Again, here's the part, no explanation. Deal with it. I felt like I was being abused with this story sometimes, with the details. The tent creature was confusing in how it was described. Too much detail in the wrong places. That part of the story left me confused about the whole segment. Like, it blows air and it wraps people up in cloth and she sings to kill it. And the worm traveling through the woods into his foot, I understood. The worm needed a ride. What I didn't understand is how it could morph into a human shape, how it could persuade you to do its bidding, why it causes trouble, and what it is exactly. Is it some con worm or some ancient being that, again, No explanation. This whole book is writing with no explanation of anything. They didn't even explain the biggest villain of the story, basically. The writer didn't explain why it was afraid of the shadow birds besides the fact that they preyed upon it. Okay, that's understandable primal fear. They didn't explain why it left the skin inside the boy's foot, except that it needed a way back. Like, a creature that big could fit in the tiny hole again? Or, how does that work? Like, at the end, they threw it in the wall, or threw it on the ground, and then it grew, and it's like, okay, would that grow in the boy's foot and split him open? I mean, it never explained. Is that why they needed to get it out of him? Or if it could, how would it do so? Or how could it fly in the air? One thing I figured out for myself is the worm creature knew where he was because the trail and part of it was inside of him, tapping into his thoughts, sort of like a tracking chip or a chip in the brain or something like that. The writer didn't explain how when the hemp stalk snipped and stitched, how that worked. Is your memories tied to your clothing somehow, or what? How did it look like it wasn't even cut, too? When he threw it in the fire, how did he remember it? Is this magic inside him? Is there magic inside everybody? And Letty put the main character inside the fairy circle. How did that protect him from the shadow birds? Did the hemstalks build the fairy circle? Was it a backup plan in case something happened? How did the fairy circle magic work? Was it like a force field or a barrier or a little salt line they couldn't cross? I mean, I don't know. What were the hemstalks? They were women, or in the form of women. They didn't need men, they said. Are they witches? Are they the old Germanic folklore about the ladies of the woods, which is supposed to be creatures older than time, but look like women, sort of like a siren or a wraith? I don't know. They never explained that either. What are they? They said they were not human, but they never explained exactly what they were. They said the grandma remembered the moon being created. Another thing that confused me was the windows from inside the house. One you saw the moon, the other you saw the sun. All they said was the grandmother liked seeing the moon. Okay, but how do they create it where you're inside the house and you see the moon? Is that a TV screen? Again, no explanation. Just, oh, this is the way it is, and deal with it. Probably because the writer had no idea what he was talking about. He just wrote a story and didn't leave anything and didn't think about it. Didn't do any research. One of the biggest things that confused me was the pond or the ocean. What was it? Some magic portal to another world? I thought you went through the woods to go to the magic world. Why would you need to cross the ocean when you can just walk through the woods? Did the hemstalks create the portal to the woods so it wasn't as hard as crossing the pond, like crossing an ocean? And why was it so evil? Why did it put Letty in a coma besides she sacrificed herself for the main character? Does the ocean have a payment system? One can't leave without the other getting hurt? Does it have a secret toll bridge system with trolls underneath and the goats cross? I don't know. It never explained in the story. It's, like I said many times before, poorly written. The guy wrote all these things and never explained it, leaving me with so many questions. Last thing was when he returned to the house at the end of the lane, how did his memory come flying back? Did the hemstalks put a spell on him that erases his memory of this every time he leaves? Has he returned many times and has forgotten, remembered several times? How does that work? It's you get close to the house, you remember it. You get far away, you forget it. Overall, I was left confused with more questions than answers. I did not like this book. Bring us a giant magical world and this complex villain, and don't explain any of it. The writer didn't do a good point of writing it like he was telling a story. A one-sided story where nobody asked questions about the details like he was telling it to himself. Or in a journal. It seemed more like a journal or a biography where he left out details because he lived them or they weren't explained after the last chapter, but he never explained. I felt unsatisfied with the story. It was confusing. And for a person with me who has memory problems, I had to reread it several times in a day just to remember it. I read it weeks ago, but I've had to reread it several times just to write this, just to make this review. It's so confusing, and I don't like it. It is a very confusing story. So, oh well. This is my book report. Like I said, it left me with more questions than answers. I did not like the story. The pace was okay. The setting was weird. The POV switched from point to point to point around the boy, so it was technically first one centralized third person, but it also switched from points to points. So, I don't know. And, I mean, there was a lot of parts of the book I did not like. So, that is my book report. My name is Larry McCarty. Have a nice day.